introduce our first speaker. So excited. He's so excited. Awesome. The first speaker is a guy I've known for quite some time. First time I ever saw him talk was at Ajax Experience in 2009. He had everyone wear blindfolds and talk about accessibility. It was one of the best talks I've seen. Lots of really cool stuff from this guy. First up is Joe McCann.
You hear me? Ooh. How about Clint? Might be the greatest MC ever. Oh, you guys don't want the speaker notes, do you? Alright. Awkward silence. Okay, good. Good morning. How's everybody doing? I know. There we go. Thank you, Clint. I'm super stoked to be back in Portland. I actually lived here for a while. Went to Portland State. Any Portland State alum in the room? One. That's pretty representative of Portland State. Feels good to be back. I do want to first of all just give a shout out to Adobe and all the sponsors for putting on PhoneGap Day. It's a great conference. There's going to be a lot of really great content here today, minus my talk. So get prepared for learning a lot of cool stuff, meeting a lot of cool people. But today I wanted to set the stage a little bit with some, I don't know, some stuff that I like to talk about. It's a little bit more higher level, not so much, writing unit tests and that sort of thing. Hopefully the content resonates with some of you, makes you think differently about mobile and just technology in general. And so the talk is, mobile is not a thing, it is everything. And you're probably thinking, right, what kind of lofty title is that? What exactly does this mean? Mobile is just this thing that we deal on the side at my job. It's not that big of a deal. Well, I think hopefully by the end of this talk, I've changed your mind and made you think differently about mobile in the context of computing and how it's actually permeating throughout society as a whole and really changing things radically. So, well, but to start off first, let me introduce myself. My name is Joe McCann, and I work at Mother New York. I know it's early, it really wasn't that funny. Let's get to the serious stuff, right? All right, guys, cool. We got a lot of data, a lot of charts, so let's start off with the most important one. That's right. The number of charts showing absurd growth is absurd, right? If you follow any analysts or pundits or any of these folks on the internet, there's a new chart seemingly every other day about how the growth of mobile is 100,000 times more important than the Nerf gun or PC. But in all actuality, it's pretty insane. If you just look at mobile traffic, mobile web traffic as a percentage of global traffic overall, it's pretty staggering as far as the growth is concerned. I mean, right now, this is from Mary Meeker from Climate Perkins. She does her internet trends report every year. Really, really good data points in there. But this one it stands out to me because, right now it says it's about 15, 18% or so, and its trajectory is obviously increasing a lot. But this is global. So if you look at, say, the EU5, UK, North America, at least the clients that I work with, the amount of mobile traffic is much higher, closer to 25, 30, 35%, 50% in some cases for some online retailers and e-commerce sites. So traffic itself is picking up in a ridiculous fashion. In addition to that, though, a lot of this is obviously driven by the ridiculous explosion amount of what would be considered mobile devices, smartphones and tablets, versus the growth or the lack of growth in PCs. And part of this extreme growth with smartphones and tablets is heavily driven by the tablets themselves. Think about it. Nowadays, you can get a really high-end tablet, like a Windows Surface or an iPad, but there's also pretty decent tablets for like $100. And the other thing that I want to point out about the growth with smartphone and tablets is that tablets aren't necessarily replacing PCs. It's actually turning out that it's an additive device. So people are actually buying tablets in addition to their PC. So the latest report came out from IDC, I think earlier this week, was PC sales are down, I think 12% year over year, which is a staggering amount. But in addition to that, it's not as if they're going away. They're still selling a significant amount of PCs. It's just that tablets are really starting to take over the space because they're cheap. And the thing that's most compelling to me about this, and you saw that really a huge spike in smartphones and tablets in terms of growth. We're just starting with this sort of stuff, and particularly around mobile in general, when it comes to actual users that are, say, using smartphones and or tablets, but particularly smartphones. There are, let's just call it 7 billion-ish people on Earth. About 5 billion of those have some sort of mobile phone, but only about 1.5 billion actually have smartphones. So if you just look at that spread and how early we are in the stage, there's still just a tremendous amount of opportunity, tremendous amount of growth when it comes to people that will actually be using smartphones. And that's just smartphones. That's not tablets, that's not wearables, that's not any other new device that Google comes up with. And then when you break it down even by geography, these are projections actually. I'm not sure if you can see that, it might be a little small, but by 2015, we haven't even reached the point of saturation in a single market, not even in North America. Latin America won't even be at half, at least the estimate is. So again, I really want to emphasize how early on we are here and how radically things are changing from a computing standpoint, from a devices standpoint, from an interaction standpoint, from a communication standpoint, and there's just upside. Last year, when they did PhoneGap EU in Amsterdam, I spoke a lot around emerging markets, and that trend is not slowing down, and the opportunity is even riper at this point, I think. So, net, I think we all probably agree, mobile it's a pretty big deal overall. You look at these metrics, and you say to yourself, wow, there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of uncertainty, but it's an exciting time. But from my end, the way I think about it in terms of devices shipped, or how many smartphone subscribers, or how many apps have been downloaded, or how much traffic is actually coming from mobile devices, those metrics sound impressive, and they are in some context. But to me, what's actually more impressive is how the mobile computing landscape as a whole is seemingly reshaping everything. And I know it might be a little bit confusing to understand what I mean by that, but excuse me, if you look into a few industries, and I'll showcase a couple here to get my point across, hopefully you'll see what I mean, is that mobile in and of itself, when you talk about smartphones, tablets, subscriber growth, it's great. How is it changing things? How is it actually reshaping things? So first industry, financial services. Wow. I don't even know how to react to that. Don't worry, there's still plenty more slides, guys. Nice one, bro. Right, financial services. Let's get back to the content here. When you think of mobile financial services, how many in the room, by a round of applause, have used Square? I don't know if they are recording it. That way the folks at home can hear that's the round of applause. Okay. Square, Google Wallet, PayPal has something. There's a number of wallet-specific mobile services that are out there. You can download an app for Chase, for Bank of America. That's great, but it's sort of kind of a duh moment, right? It's like, yeah, we're going to use your phone to pay for stuff. I want to check my bank account balance or whatever. What's more interesting to me with how mobile has reshaped financial services as a whole doesn't start off in a place like Silicon Valley. It actually starts in Africa, where folks in Africa, it turns out, there are more people there with mobile phones than bank accounts. And this is important from a development standpoint, from developing nations and places like Africa, as it's fairly well known that in addition to things like education and waste management, drinking water, etc., there's a requirement to have solid financial institutions and the ability for people to lend, people to be able to transact, people to be able to exchange money, etc., right? So the hard part is, if you're an investment bank or a financial institution of sorts, the CapEx to be able to go into a place like Africa and set up infrastructure, deal with any sort of geopolitical turmoil that may exist there, it's very expensive, it's very cost prohibitive, it's a lot of risk. But Vodafone had a rather novel idea. Why not turn phones into bank accounts? And so they did just that. They created this thing called M-Pesa, which means Pesa is Swahili for money. I looked at it on Google, I did not know that. Mobile money. And you can see from the image there, this is not some fancy, snazzy, ATM or bank. This is what seemingly is a shack of sorts where people can go in, they can buy a SIM card for their phone, load it up with some cash, and not only be able to transact with merchants, but send money to and from other people. So to me, this is pretty revolutionary. The ability for people to actually convert mobile phones into bank accounts where banks just flat out didn't exist. Next topic. This is, I think, also pretty important, particularly when it comes to mobile devices in the context of actually being on the go. This is an image from Rio de Janeiro about a month ago. I'm not sure if you guys heard about this, but they were pissed off at public transportation fare hikes. So, like 40 million people showed up in downtown or something. But this was pretty much solely driven by social media and mobile phones. And so what's interesting to me about that is, prior to doing things like protesting and wanting to actually try to make changes and stuff, you actually had to have a way for, say, a news network to come out and cover this sort of stuff, or journalists and reporters to do some sort of reporting. It may take a few days or weeks to be able to show up. In addition to that, if you're like me and you totally trust the media, you know that there's not going to be any filters or sensors put on what they're actually showing on TV. Well, this is radically changing. You can see this sort of stuff happening in places like Egypt, where the stuff that's happening on the ground is really happening, and it's not filtered, it's not censored, it's actually it's crumbling regimes and building up new regimes and tearing them back down. And this is heavily driven by mobile technology. So again, this isn't about creating the next photo sharing app. This is about actually changing the geopolitical landscape around the world. So let's shift gears here to cars. It's terrible, I know. So bad, so bad. Cars and mobile, if you're not texting and driving is a terrible thing, absolutely agree. I still do it, sadly, I'm not proud of it. You should be using your phone in your car, Bluetooth, etc., talking. But let's not think about that. Let's think about the ability for your phone to be able to actually measure how you're driving. So there's a company called Dash that has this dongle that plugs into your car's computer port, and will actually distribute back to a central server somewhere, pipe back to your phone, a score or a rating of how well you're driving, what's your tire pressure, your miles per gallon, these types of things. You can imagine things like Waze. If you're not familiar with Waze, it's a company that Google recently bought. It's social network driving or mapping application. I used it actually when I was driving across country earlier this year. It's phenomenal. You can find out where speed traps are. You can find out where there's an accident in real time and be able to navigate. So you can think maybe Google Maps, Google Earth plus Waze directly in your car's dash that may communicate with your phone to know what your profile is, or to know things about you that will enhance your driving experience. These are real. These things are really happening now. And by 2015, it's estimated that half of global car shipments will actually all be connected cars. That's global car shipment. That's not just the United States, that's China. It's half of the cars that will be shipped by 2015 will have some sort of level of connectivity, whether it's LTE or whether it's the ability for machine-to-machine messaging, so your phone actually directly communicating with the car itself. And even places like where you live are now being radically impacted by mobile. And I think many of us have probably heard of Nest, the thermostat that measures and monitors the temperature in your house and can make it more energy efficient. And I think that's really cool. It kind of targets, or at least it originally targeted hardware hobbyists of sorts that wanted to do home automation and those types of things. But what is more interesting to me is how you can take something as basic as lighting. Prior to electricity, used candles. Well, we didn't use it, we weren't there. They used candles. Hue is a lighting mechanism now where you can actually change the luminosity, the brightness, the color, etc. From your phone. So your phone, you can walk into a room and decide, I want to listen to Barry Manilow and get jiggy with it or whatever, and then you change the lighting to some amazing red or green or whatever. You can now control this from your phone. You can also do this. You can set it, so like maybe you want to wake up and it illuminates in a certain way, or you want to radically change the lighting for some effect, whatever it may be. The point is that the home is now becoming connected and being enabled with this sort of multi-remote control of sorts, which is your phone. And if you go even deeper into how mobile is changing things like cars and your home, and you think about how it's changing yourself, I think many of us have probably seen these devices. Nike Plus Fuel Band, the Fitbit, the Wii things, which tweets your weight, which is so annoying whenever you see that in your Twitter feed. It's like 200 pounds, you're only 100 pounds away from anorexia, or whatever the thing is that it's saying. And, I mean, I get it, but I think what's important there is that there's a market or a demand for people that are actually wanting to measure themselves and how mobile is actually playing into this space. And most of it's like, it's $200 bracelet of sorts, or Google Glass, which is, I'm not sure it's really self-measuring or augmented reality, but the wristbands and these types of things they're in their early stages, and there's a lot of potential there. But what a lot of people don't know is that there are now actually 1 millimeter thin sensors that you can digest and wear this sort of panel on your skin that will be monitoring all those things that Fitbit and FlexBand, or Fuel Band and all that are actually measuring. So we're getting to the point where you're going to have sensors that will be able to communicate, say, with your phone or some other sort of mobile device, running through your bloodstream. I don't know what that means exactly, but you can imagine that if enough people were doing this, and say, kids in school, there's a number of kids that are getting sick, they're getting the flu, and you got push notified that there's an uptick in influenza at where your kid goes to school. Maybe you don't want to send them to school that day. Maybe that's a little creepy. I don't know. I hate being sick, so I'm going to budge a little bit there. But this stuff is really happening. These types of devices and sensors that are going to be able to really expand what mobile computing actually means and the quantified itself. But finally, this is the last piece that I really want to dive in a little bit deeper in. Mobile itself is being upended by mobile. Right? Come on, seriously, how do you disrupt mobile with mobile, right? I'll give you an example. Text messaging. Pretty sure most of us in this room are familiar with it. It's been around since 1992. There have been all kinds of campaigns. It's been voting and surveys, and of course spam, which is the pinnacle of success. You made it. And the mobile network operators have made billions and billions and billions of dollars from SMS. However, I think the risk now is that SMS itself, this simple form of messaging, is now being completely disrupted. And how is that happening, or how did mobile network operators allow this to happen? Well, they didn't really. What happened was companies got really smart and created this concept of over-the-top messaging, or OTT messaging. And if you're not familiar with what that is, check out this animation. To all of these over-the-top messaging apps. So, by a round of applause, who has one of these apps on their phone? So if you're not familiar with what any of these apps are, they basically replicate the concept of text messaging, but instead of texting where you typically had to go from me to, say, Verizon to Clint, and Clint to Verizon to me, this is me going over the top of the mobile network operator directly to Clint. It's just using the data service or Wi-Fi or whatever to be able to send the message. And it's not just text messages, you can send voice messages, photo messages, etc. And the growth in this space is absolutely, again, I promise this is the last chart, it's pretty staggering. It's estimated by the end of this year, 40 billion messages will be sent in using over-the-top messaging apps. So this has a direct impact on revenues for mobile network operators. How do they sort of make up for lost money, these types of things. Last year, OTT messages actually eclipsed SMS traffic altogether. But that's great. Like, awesome. I don't want to have to pay for texting, and it's probably a better experience to use some of these apps. So we replaced SMS. That's not what's really going to disrupt the space, in my opinion. Instead, OTT as a platform is actually radically shifting the monetization model for things that you can do on mobile. So there's this company, WeChat, out in China that it's an over-the-top messaging app, but they partnered with McDonald's and figured out a way that if you are a follower of McDonald's on WeChat, that they will actually send you this coupon for an afternoon tea of sorts in McDonald's. Apparently that's McDonald's has tea in China, I did not know that. And for $3 you can actually get an afternoon tea. So what happens is you get this coupon of sorts, and with it you redeem it, and it's a QR code, and you walk up to the cashier and they scan it, and boom. This all happens inside the context of an over-the-top messaging app. But it doesn't stop there. There's another company called Line, which is an over-the-top messaging app out in Japan, that's using their over-the-top messaging app to create a gaming platform. So developers and Line themselves have created games that people can now play. Imagine the list of people in your contacts book that you would actually text message, but you have all of those in your Line app, so all the people that you want to send messages to. Now you can play games with them. So it's a pretty novel idea, I think, that Line, which is an over-the-top messaging app, is now creating a gaming platform inside the messaging app. But it gets even better. There's this company, Kick, some of you may be familiar with. They are an over-the-top messaging app, and they've actually created an entire app platform built on top of web technologies, which is great, so that you can actually create any type of app experience you can think of inside the context of Kick messaging. So these over-the-top messaging apps, they're not playing in Apple's space or Google's space or Verizon or AT&T's or any of these space. They're just creating their own monetization platform inside the app itself. So to me, that's really powerful that mobile is actually uprooting and upending and changing mobile as a whole inside mobile, right? They're creating new ways to monetize, to be able to expand the platform inside the context of something as simple as messaging. So the question I have is then, what other over-the-top services, or just services in general, can we think of in new and inspiring ways, just like these guys did with these over-the-top messaging apps? You see things like Netflix, for example. It's got 14 Emmy nominations for bespoke content only available on Netflix. It went over the top of all of these cable service providers. Google is now doing Google Fiber, where they're actually just going to be your internet service provider. What are the things that are going to be out there going forward that we can collectively, as designers and developers, continue to change and reshape for good, for positive change, I guess, whether it's from a monetary perspective or a political perspective or a health perspective or whatever that may be. So I think at the end of the day, it's a great time to be a mobile developer. It's a great time to be in a mobile space. So with that, I say let's go change the world together.
Let's give it up again for Joe. Yeah.